Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Vajjana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vajjana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Purjikacharya Astotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Purjikacharya Astotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Alex, Prabhu, could you try to arrive a few minutes before 7:15 tomorrow? That's why we started late, because he had to do everything himself. He couldn't find this book and various other and sundry things. Also, you're right. I think we're going to need that. I turned it off, but it's still heated up for my walk. Okay. So on page 24. 24 in the introduction. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On the 7th day of September 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are still exploring the introduction. We're on page 24, the last paragraph. He, Krishna, does not advise Arjuna simply to remember him and give up his occupation. No, the Lord never suggests anything impractical. In this material world, in order to maintain the body, one has to work. Human society is divided, according to work, into 4 divisions of social order: Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. The Brahman class, or intellectual class, is working in one way. The Kshatriya, or administrative class, is working in another way. And the mercantile class and the laborers are all tending to their specific duties. In the human society, whether one is a laborer, merchant, administrator, or a farmer, or even if one belongs to the highest class and is a literary man, a scientist, or a theologian, he has to work in order to maintain his existence. The Lord therefore tells Arjuna that he need not give up his occupation, but while he is engaged in his occupation, he should remember Krishna, Mam Anusmara. If he doesn't practice remembering Krishna while he is struggling for existence, then it will not be possible for him to remember Krishna at the time of death. Lord Chaitanya also advises this. He says, Kirtaniya sada harihi. One should practice chanting the names of the Lord always. The names of the Lord and the Lord are non-different. So Lord Krishna's instruction to Arjuna to remember me and Lord Chaitanya's injunction to always chant the names of Lord Krishna are the same instruction. There is no difference because Krishna and Krishna's name are non-different. In the absolute status, there is no difference between the reference and the referent. Therefore, we have to practice remembering the Lord always, 24 hours a day, by chanting His names and molding our life's activities in such a way that we can remember Him always. How is this possible? The Acharyas give the following example. If a married woman is attached to another man, or if a man has an attachment for a woman other than his wife, then the attachment is to be considered very strong. One with such an attachment is always thinking of the loved one. The wife who is thinking of her lover is always thinking of meeting him, even while she is carrying out her household chores. In fact, she carries out her household work even more carefully, so her husband will not suspect her attachment. Similarly, we should always remember the Supreme Lover, Sri Krishna, and at the same time perform our material duties very nicely. A strong sense of love is required here. If we have a strong sense of love for the Supreme Lord, then we can discharge our duty and at the same time remember Him. But we have to develop that sense of love. Arjuna, for instance, was always thinking of Krishna. He was the constant companion of Krishna, and at the same time, he was a warrior. Krishna did not advise him to give up fighting and go to the forest to meditate. When Lord Krishna delineates the yoga system to Arjuna, Arjuna says that the practice of the system is not possible for him. Arjuna vacha, I'll say you say. Arjuna vacha, yo yam yogastvaya prokta, samyena madhusudana, etasyaham na pashyami, chanchalat vatstatim stiram. Arjuna said, O Madhusudan, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. Bhagavad Gita 6:33. But the Lord says, at the end of the chapter, Yoginam api sarvesham madgaten antaratmana shraddhavan bhatate yo mam same yukta tamomataha. Of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, is the most intimately united with me in yoga, and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. Bhagavad Gita 6:47. So one who thinks of the Supreme Lord always is the greatest yogi, the supermost jnani, and the greatest devotee at the same time. The Lord further tells Arjuna that as a Kshatriya, he cannot give up his fighting. But if Arjuna fights remembering Krishna, then he will be able to remember Krishna at the time of death. But one must be completely surrendered in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. Okay. Can you give me just a little touch on the volume? I turned it down a bit too much. Thank you. So, we began at the bottom of page 24 after Prabhupada had quoted this verse, Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu Mamanusmara Yujyacha. And that verse is the third in the series that begins at the bottom of page 21. I'll say, you say. Antakale chamameva smaran mukpa kalevaram yak priyati samadbhavam yati nastyatra sangshayaha. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body remembering me alone at once attains my nature. So this is like a central principle of Krishna consciousness. We're all trying to cultivate remembrance of Krishna, so that at the time of death we can remember Krishna and go back to Godhead. Then Prabhupada quotes the subsequent verse, 8.6, twice in the space of like 2 paragraphs on page 23. So I'll say, you say, Yang yang bhapi smaran bhavam jajatyante kalevaram tang tame vaiti konteya sadatad bhava bhavitaha. So then he gives the general principle. Whatever state of being one remembers, when he quits his present body, in his next life he will attain to that state without fail. And then the verse just before the beginning of the reading tonight, in 24 at the bottom, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmara yudhyacha mayarpitamanho buddhir mame vaishyasya sangshayaha. All right, we read the translation there. So these three, they go together as a little lesson, kind of a very essential lesson in the Bhagavad Gita. Beginning of chapter 8 here, Antakali Chamame, text 5, he's answering questions that Arjuna asked at the beginning of the chapter. One of which is, how can one know you at the time of death? And so he says, well, if one can know me at the time of death and think of me, then I'll go back to Godhead. Otherwise, you'll think of something else and you won't go back to Godhead. And that will determine your further term of imprisonment in this material world. Therefore, tasmat sarveshu kaleshu, always think of me, always and everywhere. And at the same time, fight. So this is the setting up what we just read, the rest of the introduction that we read up to the middle of page 26. And that is that we all have to do something. You know, the Prabhupada is giving a general description here. He's not describing what's going on in ISKCON at this point. He's describing a general principle, because there is no ISKCON. Remember, he wrote this introduction before there was any followers. He's dictating this uptown on this reel-to-reel recorder. So, but he's giving the general principle. You have to do something to maintain yourself, right? And he gives the little outline here of the varnashram, just the varnas. You'll be an intellectual, you'll be a fighter or administrator or earner of money, doing banking or doing farming or whatever. Or you work with your hands, you know, somehow or other you have to. But whatever you do, you have to tailor your life, figure out how to remember Krishna all the time. That will be a success. And how is it possible? And then Prabhupada gives this example of the lady who has a paramour, and is thinking of the paramour because of the love, but at the same time doing her duties very nicely. So it boils down again to developing attachment to Krishna. That will make it easy to remember Krishna, because our mind will naturally go there. When we're having to force the mind onto Krishna, obviously we're not going to be able to do that when we have to do our material duties. So that's the struggle. And Prabhupada set up this whole movement as a way in which one can live in the world and at the same time practice Krishna consciousness, be able to come together, chant and hear and have the deities, all ways of developing our attachment for Krishna, remembrance and attachment. The thing about Krishna consciousness is that because Krishna is Krishna, all attractive. I just memorized a verse today that's really great, describing the internal meaning of Krishna that's several times quoted. There's a famous one quoted in this Bhagavad Gita about why the Absolute Truth is known as Rama. We may have forgotten that because we went through all these chapters and we came back here. Ramante yogino nante satyanande chadatmani iti ramapade naso param brahmami diyate. The yogis, bhakti yogis, they enjoy real satyananda, real bliss and happiness by meditating on the Supreme Absolute Truth, which is the source of all this bliss. Ramante yogino anante satyananda means endless, unlimited ananda, of bliss. And so they experience this constant happiness. And therefore, the Absolute Truth, Param Brahma, is known as Rama. Rama. Rama is bliss, is ananda. Now it's also a name for Krishna, who's enjoying unlimited bliss, and that's why Prabhupada has told us, and Bhaktisiddhanta gives the explanation. So what about Krishna? How does that name break down? It's very interesting. 2 syllables, Krishna. Let's see if I can remember the verse. Krishna bhuvachatak shabdo nash cha nivriti vachakaha tayor aikyam param brahma Krishna ityabhidiyate. Notice it has a similar ending. Instead of Rama, abhidiyate, it's Krishna ityabhidiyate. So the syllable Krish describing the all-attractive entity, one who's all-attractive, Krishna, the attraction element of Krishna. The syllable Na is the unlimited ananda of bliss. And so you put them together, and you get the personality of Godhead, who is all-attractive, and who is the source of unlimited bliss. So that the Todor Aikyam, Aikyam means one. You take those two, you make it one. That's Param Brahma, the Supreme Brahman. So the idea is that inconceivably, the sound Krishna is non-different from Krishna. Right? Prabhupada talks about that. And this is one of the totally inconceivable things that really is making it possible for us to practice yoga and to be successful in our lives by just chanting from any condition. We don't have to go to the forest. We don't have to do all these preliminaries. The yoga system. Remember, we studied the yoga system. Chapter 6. There's all of these preliminaries. There's Ashtanga yoga, right? So that's 8 limbs. And it starts out with Yama Niyama. You can't begin unless you do Yama Niyama. Yama Niyama is all of these don'ts. The Yamas are the don'ts, and the Niyamas are the do's. Now, if you walk in here and it says, "Hey, do you eat meat? Are you following the 4 regs?" What do you mean? What's the 4 regs? No, it's like no meat and gambling. Are you kidding? No, I'm just curious. Get out. You can't chant Hare Krishna. You can't practice this yoga unless you do. None of us would be here. The whole point is, I just heard Prabhupada gets it in the lecture. He says it many times. There's no prerequisites. There's no prerequisites to practicing the essential practice of Bhakti Yoga, chanting Hare Krishna. The name is so powerful, the chanting is so powerful, that you become able to follow the yamas and niyamas of Bhakti Yoga and enter into the process of devotional service. You get the spiritual strength inconceivably to practice concentration and meditation just by hearing that name, just by hearing over and over again and decreasing those things which distract you from Krishna. There's a whole discipline. But there's no prerequisites. The point is, it's possible for everyone to do it. So, yeah.
So if that's the case, if there's no prerequisites for Bhakti Yoga, and if Bhakti Yoga then supplies anything that could be supplied by Ashtanga Yoga, any other form of yoga, then what's the purpose of it existing?
Ashtanga Yoga.
Yeah, then why should it even exist if it doesn't give anything which isn't given by Bhakti, and if it's can be given to anybody can take it up? Then.
Well, the point is that remember that the holy name has always been there, but the process that Lord Chaitanya gave of the dancing and the chanting and all of that was unique to this yuga. He pioneered that. That's why you remember when you read the Adi Leela how it was so disturbing to those Smarta Brahmins. Smarta Brahmins, they were steeped in the Smritis. They knew the Shastra. We don't find this in the Vedas. The Sujas are chanting Vedic mantras, and in other words, they were the ones who went to the Muslim to complain, and then they came back and broke the Madanga drum. It was revolutionary. So the point is that these processes, especially Ashtanga Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, was especially suited for the earlier age, the Satya Yuga. Why was that? In other words, why didn't they just get up from their meditation, 60,000 year meditation, and start, let's just do 40,000 years. Now let's chant and dance. Why take all that trouble? It goes back to how the Vedas themselves, and how they came down, and they were restricted. The whole thing was restricted to the Brahminical class. And this aspect of Krishna consciousness, the Gaudiya Vaishnava understanding, and the pastimes of Krishna, they weren't understood to be the ultimate goal. It seems counterintuitive that even you find in Lord Chaitanya's Leela. You remember that incident where Haridas Thakur is with the Majumdars, and he's in the Antya Leela, and he's describing the glories of the holy name. And there was this Smarta Brahman there who had been engaged as a tax collector or something, and he was offended that Haridasa said, just by some indifferent chanting of the name, you can get liberation. Liberation? I've been trying all my life, to become qualified to think about liberation. And it takes thousands of years and so many births, and it does. If you're trying to do it by the force of will and restrain your senses, and practice this tapasya, all the stories. Vishwamitra Murti's out there in the forest, he's a powerful yogi, he's got all these cities, But then Indra gets envious, as he does. He sends Menaka down, and just the tinkling of the ankle bells, he lost it. He hadn't really transcended or purified, sublimated his sex desire. He just repressed it. He was very powerful, but he wasn't powerful enough to control that when it came out, and just overtook him. Whereas Haridas Thakur, he's a young man chanting Hare Krishna in the middle of the night, and twice. One is a prostitute comes, and then Maya Devi personified comes, to try to seduce him. And he's Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. Why? Because the flow of his attraction was constantly going to Krishna. So the answer is that this process was hidden because it's a special blessing for this age. It's a special blessing. Namo Mahavadanyaya. You are the most munificent, and we should try to use that word. Munificent means giving. What is it? Magnanimous is forgiving. Munificent. Probably would use them interchangeably. But the point is that Lord Chaitanya is most munificent because he's giving this prema freely. And so it's a rare thing. It's as rare as when Krishna comes himself. So it just hadn't been revealed, and you can see how easily it can be covered. Even when Lord Chaitanya left, it became covered because from outside it looks like, what do you got? You're meditating on these salacious activities of your so-called God. In other words, we don't read all of these things in the Shastra. Yeah, we read the 10th canto, but it's nothing compared to the Gita Govinda, So it's easy to take it lightly or take it in the wrong way, and it can become covered again. So the answer is that they're practiced for different ages. The Gita is like that. It goes through the Karma Yoga, goes through the Jnana Yoga and Dhyana Yoga, and when Arjuna rejects it, Krishna says, no, it's possible by practice. And Prabhupada makes the point, no, it can't be impractical. It may be impractical for us at this time, but at one point it seemed, that was the practice. So it's just a part of how history unfolded. And we should be very thankful. There's a part, I was just reading this wonderful section, 11th canto, maybe we can access it later. Just before and after the famous verse describing Lord Chaitanya, Krishna Varnam Tisha Krishnam Sango Pankasta Parshadam Yagyar Sankitana Prayajanti Hisumedasa. This is the teachings of the last of the Yogendras. Those teachings of the Yogendras are really important. And it's a question of who is the incarnation of the age. How do the different incarnations come? And so this one describes the incarnation of Kali Yuga, Krishna Varnam. Now our acharyas have given us the proper understanding because these words can mean different things. So Krishna Varnam means two things. One is that the avatar is Krishna himself. He belongs to the category of Krishna, just like the Varna ashram. They're describing different categories. Or Varna can mean syllables. He's always enunciating the syllables Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. How Lord Chaitanya started his Sankirtan movement, with the mantra, Krishna, 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 Hey, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. It's a mantra like that. So this is describing. So then, but the teaching goes on, and he's describing there how rare is this this particular Kali Yuga. Is that the incarnation of the age? There's always an incarnation of the age. He's hidden, you know, but he's not always Krishna himself, and teaching the Sankirtan as Lord Chaitanya taught it. So it says there, what is it? Kaling sabhaji antyaya guna gyasara bhaginaha yatra sankirtanenaiva sarva swarta vilabhyate. And this is kind of according, you know, in the line of the answer to your question. Those who are Aryans, who know the spiritual value of things and are progressing spiritually, and who can get to the essence of things, Sarabhagina, Sara is the essence, they worship this Kali Yuga. Kaling Sabhaji and Yaya. Kaling Sabhaji, they worship Kali, this Kali Yuga. Guna Gya Sarabhagina. Why? Yatra Sankirtanevaya. Because here, in this Kali Yuga, just by Sankirtan, you know, all of your svartas will be achieved. This is a very important word, sva-arta. Arta means something valuable. It often means money, as in dharma, arta, kala, dharma, arta, kama, and moksha, you know. But we're not after that arta. We're after sva-arta, the goal of the soul, what we really want. Prahlad famously says, Prabhupada made it famous, nayad vacha, no, nayab, I can't believe I forget this one. Nate vidu svartakatimi Vishnam. These people he just described, those who are dedicated to materialistic household life, who can't control their senses, grihametis, you know, materialists, they can never become Krishna conscious. They're always chewing the chewed. That famous chewing the chewed line is in there. Punak punak charvita charvananam. It's a nice one to know. You know, because we can easily realize that, yeah, people are trying this way, that way to enjoy slightly different, you know, but it's the same thing. So those people don't know that their real goal of the soul, what they should be striving for, is Vishnu. They have bahir arta, manina. Their minds are absorbed in external goals that concocted for the mind and the senses, which just keep them on the treadmill of birth and death. So, but here, this verse says, by Sankirtan, you can really achieve that goal, which is Krishna, which is love for Krishna, going back home, back to Godhead. Just by Sankirtan. No prerequisites, no severe austerities, you know. You can be a woman, you can be a Shudra, you can be a Chandal, you can be a Mlecha, you can be anybody. It doesn't matter. But what you need is, as Lord, you know, the famous song by Lord Nityananda opening up the marketplace of the holy name, you need faith. You have to have some faith in the holy name. I mean, you can practice a little bit without faith, but you know, if you're resistant to it, you won't really catch on. So that's not so easy to get, you know, the faith in the holy name. And so we're very fortunate, and we should cash in a lottery ticket, so to speak. You know, we don't want to take. Do you want to take birth again? I mean, this world may come to an end before I leave my body naturally. To speak of you guys. You know, there's no time left. The next time I give Sunday lecture, that's my title. Don't waste time. Don't waste time. You know, who is really old? You know, old means you're going to die any minute. Well, we're all about the same age right here. Okay, so therefore, remember me and fight. And then he gives this principle here. My arpatamano buddhir, with your mind and intelligence dedicated to me, you will come to me without a doubt. So this is what it's all about here. All right, let's see if we have any discussion on that. We can. Okay.
Could I also
so
ask
middle of 26. Go ahead.
This is also not so important, but you were mentioning Srila Prabhupada would use the word magnanimous, someone pretty much interchangeably with the word munificent. In the 26 qualities of a devotee, that magnanimous, is that more on the giving or charitable side, or more on the merciful, forgiving
You know,
side?
I want to look at the Sanskrit.
Oh, okay.
I think it's probably the munificent side, because that's, you know.
So the charitable side, as opposed to not the forgiving side necessarily.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'll find it. There's a list we can find it. Okay, middle of page 26. We work not with our body actually, but with our mind and intelligence. So if the intelligence and the mind are always engaged in the thought of the Supreme Lord, then naturally the senses are also engaged in His service. Superficially, at least, the activities of the senses remain the same, but the consciousness is changed. The Bhagavad Gita teaches one how to absorb the mind and intelligence in the thought of the Lord. Such absorption will enable one to transfer himself to the kingdom of the Lord. If the mind is engaged in Krishna's service, then the senses are automatically engaged in His service. This is the art, and this is also the secret of the Bhagavad Gita. Total absorption in the thought of Sri Krishna. Modern man has struggled very hard to reach the moon, but he has not tried very hard to elevate himself spiritually. If one has 50 years of life ahead of him, he should engage that brief time in cultivating this practice of remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This practice is the devotional process. I'll say, you say. Shravanam kirtanam Vishno, smaranam padasevanam, archanam bandhanam dasyam, sakyam atmanivedanam. Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.23. These 9 processes, of which the easiest is Shravanam, hearing the Bhagavad Gita from the realized person, will turn one to the thought of the Supreme Being. This will lead to remembering the Supreme Lord and will enable one, upon leaving the body, to attain a spiritual body which is just fit for association with the Supreme Lord. So before I go on, I may forget. So I was thinking today, I was hearing Prabhupada speak on the 7th chapter, Bhagavad Gita, talking about Rasohama Sukonteya, I am the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon, and so forth. So, and before that, we have the list of the 8 elements, material elements, that make up our body and make up everything else. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. So I was thinking how, one way to remember Krishna is to, and Prabhupada mentions this, how, we are enjoying all His gifts. How are we living from moment to moment? Now I think more people are conscious of the breathing process, during this pandemic than before. Because that's what's going to get you, not being able to breathe, right? So I was meditating in a way that I invented before I even met the devotees. I was chanting Hare Krishna. I got it from the one other yoga group. And I was, we'd meditate, and also do some breathing. So I was thinking, well, let me meditate on the Hare Krishna mantra in breath and out breath. Very simple. And so I would do that, and I found it a very, uplifting kind of meditation. No, I would do it silently. Yeah, I would chant a couple of rounds, and then I would go inside internally, and I would just associate the mantra with my breathing, slowly chanting, visualizing the name printed out, whatever. And so I was thinking, well, let's think about this a minute. That very air that you're breathing, right? I mean, where does that come from? That's Krishna. So at every moment, we're dependent on Krishna, and you can, by practicing that, you can. It's an act of thanking, gratitude. Oh, I'm taking this breath so nicely, and it's Krishna's. He's giving me life at every moment. What to speak of the other things, the food and the water and everything. It's all coming from Krishna. So this is a way. I mean, this is the first step in God realization. That's meant in second canto, and it's there in the 7th chapter. And it's a natural segue from the 6th chapter, where Arjuna rejected this kind of artificial way, going alone, practicing and working on the mind, and controlling the senses, sitting on a certain seat, and he said properly, well, I can't do that. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balabhadraham. The mind is very powerful, it's very restless, obstinate. It's like trying to control the wind, Like, how can you do that? I can't do it, Krishna. So, yeah, you can do it with practice. And Arjuna says, well, what if I fail? So don't worry, nothing is lost. You'll be born in a rich family or even a family of bhaktas, yogis, So that's kind of, one sense, kind of depressing. Because you're kind of throwing in the towel right away. Okay, nothing is lost, you may take another birth, maybe another couple of births. So then at the end he says, don't worry. Yogina Sarvesham. The greatest yogis, one is always thinking of me. So you can you can just visualize Arjuna and say, that's a relief, because I'm always thinking of you. I love you. He's saying that. He's already the greatest yogi. So then the next verse, 7.1, talks about Krishna is saying, now I'm going to show you how your mind can be attached to me. And that brings up this whole story of this lady with the paramour. The mind is attached to something, you can't forget it. It's not like you have to try to remember it, work, If you love somebody and you're trying to hide it from your husband, then, you do your duties very nicely, but your mind is everything. So the key is to do those things that will develop a natural attraction for Krishna, and then it'll be easy as pie to remember Krishna. In other words, it'll become naturally... And if you make an effort to remember Krishna, you will become attracted to him because he is naturally attractive. That's what his name means. So the whole process of Krishna consciousness, when you think about it, is just all kinds of ways in which you're, the senses, okay, it's time, for you to sweep the floor, Bhakti Hari, and it says, okay, I joined up, I'm doing it. So you're sweeping the floor, and what are you going to do? Chant Hare Krishna way, sweep the floor, But you're doing it for Krishna. It's not like, if you're some janitor somewhere and you're thinking, oh great, I got this job, I'll be able to pay my rent. You're thinking of the money, No, there's no money. You're just doing it voluntarily, but you're doing it for Krishna. So that's just one example. But the most important thing to link with Krishna is the mind, and that comes through hearing. And naturally, if you hear enough, you'll remember, And that's why getting together with other devotees, chanting together, sharing, reading out loud to each other, reminding each other of Krishna, that's so important. We read that in chapter 10. That's the 4 essential verses. The second one deals with the process of bhakti. Matchitta, always be placing their mind on Matchitta, Madgata Prana, the life air, their energy is dedicated to me. They're always thinking of me. And they're meeting together and talking about me. Bodhiyantak parasparam, katayantaschamam nityam. And dashtushyanti chadamanti, enjoying spiritual pleasure and becoming satisfied. Ramanti, is it? So, if you have a means of enjoying spiritually, by simply talking about Krishna and, doing simple things, it's not anything great, austerity really we're performing here, then that's the most valuable thing, because your mind is becoming attracted to the object which will take you out of this world. If you can remember anything that you heard or you thought. So this is what's practical yoga for us. And that's what this Bhakti Yoga process is all built around. So now Prabhupada is giving these 9 processes. They all begin with Shravanam Kirtanam. And the Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting, pervade the other processes. It's not that if you're doing dasya, you're serving Krishna, that you're not remembering, you have to be remembering Krishna as you serve. And all of them, Pada Sevanam, serving the lotus feet. So you can remember, with these lotus feet, Krishna was walking in the forest and so on. In other words, it all ties together, the way the mind works. But the key element is cultivating Krishna consciousness, so that when our habits of thought and our attraction are drawing the mind away, we have to bring it back. And that's all of the... What is that famous verse? Smarta Vyaksadatam Vishnu. No? This is a really important one. Smarta Vyaksadatam Vishnu. Vismatavyo najatuchit. Sarva vidinashediksur ete oreva kinkara. Smarta Vyaksadatam Vishnu. Always remember Vishnu, Krishna, and never forget him. All the other practices of bhakti are servants of these two. It's interesting. Now this Vismartavya, recently I can't just read the books. I read the books and I say, wait a minute, is that right? I don't think everyone does that, right? They just read the book. That's my habit over these years. So at the end of the whole Bhagavatam, there's something I may have shared with you already. You've been around for a while. 8 verses about Krishna Katha, Krishna Katashtika. Have you ever heard that? So the whole idea is there's 2 verses at the end Basically, it's all about hearing and chanting, you know. And what's the result of that? So this verse says, the seventh verse says, Yashakshayam eva parishamak paro varnashanachara tapakshutarishu avismati shiradapada padmayo gunanavara shravanaradabi. So by nicely practicing your duty in varnashram, hearing the Vedas, performing austerities, all these other things which are not bhakti, the best you can do is get fame and opulence, which is fleeting. You know, you may go to the heavenly planets, but ultimately it's lost. However, by practicing hearing and chanting, gunanavara shravanaradabi. Gunanavara means describing his qualities according to what you have heard from Shastra. Shravanaradabi, and showing great respect for hearing the same, hearing and chanting. You get a vismati shridharapada padmaya. Shridhar is a name for Krishna, he who possesses all opulence, or the goddess of fortune. Remembrance of his lotus feet. Okay, that's the result of all of this. That, remembrance. Not any great wealth or going to heaven like that. Now, the word avismati is there. Notice that was also there in the other verse. What is that? Vismartavya tatam vishnu. Vismartavyo najat. Vismartav is related to avismati. Avismati means no forgetfulness. You see? Vismartavyo najatuchit. Not forgetting him at any time. Vismartavya means not to forget, not to remember. So, what's the difference between remembering and not forgetting? You see? There's an important difference. One is coming from the platform, you're at the point of remembering almost all the time, but occasionally you forget. And so when you're really perfect, you never forget. Remembering means that you're mostly forgetting, you're mostly not even thinking, and you're remembering sometimes. You cultivate remembrance. You see what I'm saying? So this course about avismati really means unbroken remembrance. And we didn't have that in the translation. This is the 12th canto. I worked with Gopi on it, He just had remembering. I said, no. Unbroken remembrance. It's not just remembrance, it's unbroken remembrance that is the result of constantly working on hearing and chanting Krishna, Katha. So that's equivalent to samadhi. When you have unbroken remembrance, then it means that you're always thinking of Krishna. And Prabhupada showed that, how he could work in the world, and he could be in the world, and he'd lead the kirtan, and deal with money and everything, and still be always remembering Krishna. Because once you, develop that, powerful, love, there's no question of forgetfulness. There's no question. And there's so many verses and instances. Dhruva is a famous one. He went to the forest. He wanted to get that kingdom, very determined, he's in the Satya Yuga, little boy, So Narada, he took that determination and he engaged that in Krishna. He gave him a process of yoga. That was basically a Satya Yuga type process, severe austerities, meditation, but he integrated it with bhakti. What's he chanting? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Haribol. He's chanting the name of Krishna, name of Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and he's performing and visualizing the Lord in his heart, and also doing a rudimentary deity worship. If you're out there in the forest there, you can, near a stream, you can make a deity of mud and worship and then dissolve it. You can do that. So the point is, he was a bhakta. And by the time he saw Krishna, all of his material desires is gone. He wanted the kingdom greater than his great-grandfather. He's kind of childish, this Brahma kingdom, But he wanted that, So Krishna gave it to him. He gave him Dhruvaloka, which isn't destroyed even when Brahmaloka is destroyed. He got the kingdom. But he didn't want it. He said, I understand now that kingdom I want is like broken glass compared to your darshan, to see you. Now I realize I've got the valuable jewel of your darshan, and Swamin, oh Lord, Swamin Katatosmi Vadangniyache. I don't want any other benediction. And that again and again that comes up. Lord Chaitanya's teaching, Nadanang, Najanang, Nasundang, like that. But how could something be so valuable? There's one verse that's repeated with a slight variation in different parts of the Bhagavatam. And it lists all the standard things that one would want, ruling the earth, Indraloka, unlimited wealth, even Brahma Loka, liberation, which is, they don't care about it. Those who are satisfied with serving my lotus feet. So that's really what we're aiming for. And then there's no question of forgetting Krishna at the time of death. The last verse of this Krishna Katashtika is really important. It begins with this word avismriti. The second to last verse also has that word in it. But this one says, avismriti Krishna Badada Vindayo. Okay, so now I've got this unbroken remembrance of Krishna's lotus feet. Then what's the result of that? What does that bring with it? So he gives these benedictions. Avismriti Krishna Badada Vindayo Chinotya Badrani Chashangtanoti. The first sentence is it destroys all abhadras. You may notice if you read enough of these books that the first benefit, even of chanting, is liberation. In other words, you get free from all your bad karma, and good karma, but any karma. In other words, you're not going to suffer anymore. That's the first thing. But that's just the first. That's the thing. That's number one. So, Chinotya Badhani destroys all abhadras, all of your latent hang-ups and things that are keeping you bound to this earth. Shangtanoti, and it expands your good fortune. Sham is the reason why Lord Shiva is called Shankara. Shankara means he who spreads good fortune for all. But this you don't need Shiva. This is coming already just from remembering Krishna. So then it goes on. Shangtanoti, Sattvasya Shuddhim, purification of one's existence. Paramatma Bhakti, devotional service to the Supreme Soul, Krishna. There's no doubt about it, And then, Paramatma Bhakti, characterized by Jnanam, Vijnana, Viraga Yuktam. By knowledge, realized knowledge, and detachment from everything else. In other words, you're back home, back to Godhead. So that comes from, Sankirtamano Bhagavad. The whole series starts with the word Sankirtan. Chanting together Krishna's name, qualities, form, hearing them, preaching them, absorbing oneself in it. That produces what we're looking for. Oh my God, come to the end of the line here. All right, let me just tell me where we stopped. I think we stopped after the first paragraph on page 27, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. All right, and the next one just goes on with the same theme. How, constant remembrance of Krishna takes you back to the supreme goal. So we'll resume that tomorrow. And I'll give you another couple of verses. I'd see ones we haven't heard for a while. Well, some of you, did you hear that? Any of you hearing the Shamali's memorial? You heard the Shamali? Yeah. So you hear my little recitation of the, yeah. You didn't hear it. You didn't hear it. And you didn't hear it. You probably did hear it. Yeah. Anyway, that's, we're given so many ways of praying, And this, I'll give the first one of the one for Krishna. There's also the Shuka, you're thinking. So this is Krishna's Kaviraj. Now why is he called Kaviraj? The king of poets, because of writing these verses and many others in the Govinda Lilamrita. He says, Ambudanjanendra Nila Nindikanti Dambara Kunkamojaraka Vidyaranchi Divyadambara Shimadangacharti Tindupita Nata Chandana Swangvi Dasidostu Mesu Ballavendra Nandana. His dark complexion mocks mascara, sapphires, and the blackish cloud. His garments shine like reddish rising sun with lightning bolts endowed. With sandal paste enhanced with camphor are his handsome limbs replete. May Nanda's son bestow on me the service of his lotus feet. And I wish I could say I had memorized all the others, but unfortunately that one's not with me. I'm going to try to keep going with that. But we have, I'll give you one more, quick one. You know this one, you've heard it before. Udasi Padispura Dindana Mindindana Mandada Sujolasitam Hadamanganata Mangala Mangala Sachandanam Vande. Upon his chest is manifest the mark of goddess Shri, and there to rest the best of wreaths, a temple for the bees, who worship him by singing hymns that limn his loving play, while Shri Hari most gleefully acclaims the way they play. I'm sorry. First of all, the word limb, Dharmaraj, you may not know this word. L-I-M-N, not L-I-M-B. Limb means to describe, believe it or not. So I'll start again and then we'll adjourn for Kirtan. Upon his chest is manifest the mark of goddess Shri, and there to rest the best of wreaths, a temple for the bees, who worship him by singing hymns that limn his loving play, while Shri Hari most gleefully acclaims the way they pray. For Braja's love-mad milkmaids, and for all the Brahmins' wives, Shri Krishna is the ultimate good fortune in their lives. His sandal-paste anointed limbs bedim the full moon's glow, unto the lotus feet of Shri Hari I bow down low. So on that note, we'll adjourn to meet tomorrow, same time, same place. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. And a shout out to our internet crowd. Pradyumna, if you're watching, accept my humble obeisances. Hari Bol.